Happy Friday, guys. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Coffee with Clients. So glad to see all of you come in as I'm seeing you pouring in. And so excited to be hosting once again with my fabulous co-host, Cassandra Reagan. If you've heard her at all teach, she is the master. So you're in for a treat today. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, so I was really just trying to, so my name's Chantel Seneca, if you guys don't know me. Independent Optavia coach, and love helping people. And I love our coffee with client time on Fridays because we are diving into the elements, which guys, we're on element 20. So if you're new to the party, just know that you can always go to the YouTube channel and catch up on prior episodes. And just in case you don't know, the transition episodes, it was 2 of them, are fabulous. Cassandra did an amazing job, but all of them, any of the things you're struggling with, whether it's mindset, sleep, put a 1 in the chat if you were on last week for sleep, because the week before, so many of you said that was one of the struggles with the 4 healthy habits. So I'm just wondering if any of you were on last week for the healthy habit of sleep, the element, I think it was 19 because we're on 20 today. So some of you were on, hopefully that helped you guys sleep better. Sleep is a precious thing, as we all know. So that is so fun. So today we're going to be talking about element 20, inflammation. And I'm hoping, I'm going to give it a few more minutes for people to come on, but I'm hoping that it's enough curiosity that you want to be on to learn about inflammation. And it's so exciting to learn and grow together, guys. Truly, this is the difference in anything else out there, any other, I think, in my personal opinion, any other program, plan, any other thing, is that we not only just have the fuelings to back what we do to get us to our healthy goal weight, but we have the healthy habits and the elements. So it's a one-stop shop, a complete system where we can learn about things. And you know, education, like knowledge is power. Like we've heard that, right? But truly it's power. So the more we know, the better prepared we can be to win our health battle. For sure. Okay, so I'm going to have Cassandra just come say hi a minute while we're waiting on people to come in, and then I'll do a little poll. But Cassandra, just come on and say hi and tell us if you're excited about teaching today.
Hey, you guys. So yes, I am so excited about teaching this topic. Actually, what you may not know is that we get to choose the topics, right? And we get to look at what topics are coming up. We get to choose, and I chose inflammation. And some of you may say, why would you do that? That's a pretty boring topic, but I'm going to tell you, this topic has fascinated me since my first week on plan. And I'll tell you why, is because I had about 40 pounds of bariatric regain. And as I had started regaining weight, I think it was 10 months before I found this plan, I woke up one morning and my hip hurt. And I thought, oh, I must have done something, right? Well, the next day, my right hip hurt still. A week later, 2 weeks later, it got to the point where I made my husband switch sides with me because I'm a side sleeper and I like to hug the edge, and I had to sleep on my other hip. For 10 months, my hip hurt, you guys. And I didn't understand it. I thought, is this what getting old is all about? Is this just my life from here on out? I'm going to wake up one day, something's going to hurt, and it's just going to hurt from here on out, right? Well, a week on this plan, you guys, my hip didn't hurt anymore. And I didn't notice it. I just one day realized my hip doesn't hurt, and I don't remember the last time it hurt. So that's why this plan is amazing, but it's also why this topic fascinates me. So we're going to hear why, okay? And we're going to talk about it, and hopefully it'll be fun and it won't be boring.
I love that because, you know, one of my philosophies in life is no pain, right? So who wants pain in their life, right? And with that being said, thank you, Cassandra. I cannot wait to you dive into the teaching. But with that being said, I just want to celebrate one of my clients, Terry Yoho. She's going to come off in a minute because she reached her goal weight. So guys, that is, first of all, let's celebrate her with that. Like, she reached her goal weight, right? But she did it in a very tough season. And I'm saying tough because I'm literally walking through very similar season that she's walking through. And I understand the struggle that I'm having with emotional eating. And so for her to do that has been amazing. So Terry, will you come off and just share a little bit of what you've just been through, and we can celebrate with you of reaching that goal.
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's really good to be here. I have been I was the sole caretaker of my mother who was terminally ill. And I've only been back on Optavia 3 months, but I started it at the moment she started becoming her worst. And I started to realize, and I knew beforehand, that I ate either out of boredom, frustration, stress level. I never ate because I was hungry, but with taking care of her, my stress level was out the windows. And I kept reminding myself, and I even have it on my bathroom mirror, my feelings only last for a minute. Don't react to a feeling, act on what you know. And that kind of kept me leveled. And I was determined at all costs because I needed my health in order to take care of her health. And it was those little mind games that would try to come up that I would just blast back with, it's just a feeling. I'm on a program every 2 hours. I'm going to do this. I am not going to back down. She needs me more than I need my feelings. And she did end up passing away. And in that time of high stress, I met my goal. I met my goal. And my initial goal was really not to lose weight, but to get myself healthy, because I was the queen of junk food. I was the queen of grab something and eat, drive through, throw it in my mouth, keep going. And I needed to get disciplined. And that was more important to me than losing my 25 pounds. But I did lose my 25 pounds. I did stay on course. And I am very proud of myself because it was a very stressful time. And we don't have to let stressful times dictate what we throw in our mouth and how, to just give up. No, that's not an option anymore. So with that, I love Octavia. I love my coach. She was there every step of the way, and you just can't go wrong. It's time to get healthy, people. And it's time to, just start disciplining our mind with those healthy habits.
I love that, Terry. I'm so, so proud of you. We walked through this journey together, and as I'm in the middle of that, I'm taking care of my mom-in-law. It is sometimes really stressful because you don't know what is going to come each day, right?
Right.
Anybody in a season of that, like right now, where they're just like, it's life is high stress, very emotional, and you every day you wake up and it's kind of like walking in a landmine, you just don't know. And I watched Terry as my client do this, and I thought, well, gosh, I can do it too, right? Because she was just determined. And so show Terry some love in the chat, guys, because that's amazing. So proud of her for doing that. And so sorry for the passing of her mom. But I do know that her mom is proud of her for taking care of herself during the midst of taking care of her. And I will say this too, a lot of times, just because it's the season I'm in, a lot of times as caregivers, we pour so much into caring for whoever we're taking care of, right? That we forget to take care of ourselves, and we excuse that. We say, well, I'll deal with that when this crisis is over. Here's the truth, guys. We live in a fallen world and crisis comes all the time, right? And I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, I'm just trying to be real, right? And so we have to learn to manage the crisis and know that we have to put ourselves first. Because what good are you to care for someone if you're not caring for yourself first, right? My husband says it like this: we can't be about the Great Commission or any mission if we're out of commission. If we're having inflammation, we're going to learn about today. So thank you again, Terry, for sharing that. So good. So guys, just a couple of things before we get started on Coffee with Clients I would like to share. First of all, I got my cup of coffee and I'm ready to dive into this. But we love diving into the elements. I hope you have your life book. By the way, in element 4, again, you can go back to the YouTube channel and watch it, but on element 4, we talk about the healthy mindset. So the emotional eating stuff, it's just a really good element to continue to go back to and refresh on. But even with all the elements, your life book, your Dr. A's Habits of Health book, which is amazing, with all of that, your greatest source of information and direction would be your coach. So definitely reach up to your coach. This does not take the place of what your coach can and will do for you and help you through. So definitely reach back up to your coach. And just remember, Coffee with Clients is every Friday at noon. So excited that you're here with us today. So let me just ask you this. So I'm going to ask you to put I'm just wondering, we go get into inflammation, and it's actually called maximizing your anti-inflammation protection. That's the name of the element. But I'm just wondering, when we talk about inflammation, right? When we're talking about inflammation, what do you feel like? Do you feel like inflammation? I guess, Cassandra, you asked me that question early and I'm getting it all mixed up. Why don't you ask it and let's do it like this? Because I'm interested to see what the answer is. While I put my answer in the chat too.
Okay, yeah. So what I want to ask you guys is put a 1 in the chat if your understanding of inflammation is that it's a bad thing. Put a 1 in the chat if it's a bad thing. Put a 2 in the chat if you think it's a good thing. I'm just going to see what the answers are here. Okay. Lots of
And
ones.
Cassandra, I'm gonna let you,
Sure.
it's a 1 for me, but maybe I don't know. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and take it from here and let's just see where we go with this.
All right, all right. So I think that most people would, would say, yes, inflammation is not a good thing, right? And I do think that when it comes to inflammation, we don't have all the information, right? So in element 20, like she says, it's maximizing your anti-inflammatory or anti-inflammation protection. And it actually correlates with section 2.14 of your Habits of Health book. And this is the thing. Our Habits of Health book is actually the information, right? Our life book is kind of like Cliff Notes or your workbook for the Habits of Health. So the Habits of Health has all of this incredible information for you. So if this is a subject, if you're on here because you have always struggled with inflammation, sections 2.14 of the Habits of Health is going to be your guide. Okay. So let's talk about inflammation. All right. So this section, we're going to explore why your immune system is so important to optimal health. We're going to identify where and how inflammation could be showing up in your life. Some areas you probably already know, but some you may be actually surprised. And then we're going to evaluate opportunities to reduce that inflammation. Okay, next, there we go. All right, so it all starts with our immune system. Our immune system is the thing that is triggering inflammation. So let's just talk about our immune system before we go on to inflammation. Our immune system, one, it seeks out intruders such as pathogens. So this is bacteria, viruses, parasites, anything that invades your system and can cause you to be sick, right? So it attacks those things. Then it remembers every bacteria, virus, parasite that it's fought, so it can recognize those repeated threats, right? It also, besides seeks out pathogens, it resolves tissue and cell damage. So anytime you injure tissue, anytime there's cell damage, your immune system responds to begin the healing process. It removes injurious stimuli and initiates the healing process, which is what we just said. But this is the thing. Once it's done, it should settle down from its normal vigilant state. In other words, once you have your body has fought, has repaired, has healed, it's supposed to shut down and turn off and kind of calm down, right? So that's the normal process. Okay, next slide, Emma. All right, so that brings us back to the question, is inflammation good or bad? Okay, so inflammation is simply the immune system response to those pathogens we just talked about, toxic compounds, things that we are exposed to, irradiation, and cell damage. It's a natural response. So inflammation actually acts by removing the stimuli, initiating the healing process, and it's a defense mechanism that is vital to health. So actually, inflammation is a good thing because it's how our body responds to threats and heals our systems. All right. But there are 3 types of inflammation. Okay. So that healing inflammation, the normal inflammation, the inflammation that happens, and then once its job is done, it turns off. That's the good kind. 2, acute inflammation. Dr. A talks about acute inflammation as the kind that grabs your attention. In other words, your back is hurting. You've gotten a sunburn and it's painful and inflamed and red, right? You know acute inflammation. But then there's something called chronic low-grade inflammation. And this is the one that we're talking about. And this is the one that Dr. A calls the silent enemy. Okay. So chronic low-grade inflammation can go unnoticed long-term. I mean, and I put unnoticed in quotes here because this is the thing. You're probably feeling bad. You're probably tired. You probably don't have energy, but you don't have the pain of acute inflammation, right? And the thing about chronic low-grade inflammation is that it can trigger your immune system to attack healthy systems and organ systems, and it plays a major role in degenerative diseases and aging. Okay, so just one little, I'm going to start right here, okay? Cell damage and system damage. This is what we're talking about. This is what low-grade chronic inflammation can call is cell and system damage. Okay, so it can occur to the following reasons. One, excessive and prolonged normal stimuli. I want you to think of it as this. If I just kind of scratched my skin right here, no big deal, right? But what if I scratched the same spot for 3 hours? What would happen to my epithelial tissue? What would happen to my skin? It would have cell damage and tissue damage, right? Same thing. So it's excessive and overly prolonged that begins the damage. The action of toxins and other adverse influences that inhibit vital cell function. So that can be the stuff that we're exposed to, and deficiency of oxygen and nutrients. So even not getting the proper nutrients can cause cell damage and system damage that can activate our immune system. So hostile environment, both internal and external, stimulates our immune system every day through thousands of little exposures, and the resulting damage can be just staggering to our long-term health. For example, okay, I don't know if you guys remember, but when we were talking about fuelings and the reason why they're incredible, we talked about the issue with the standard American diet. It's something we call SAD, S-A-D, which is actually a very, a great representation. It's SAD. But one of the things we talked about was it's not necessarily the high sugars from refined grains and refined sugars, the high sugars that are causing damage to our systems, but it's the chronically high insulin levels. Okay. Insulin is simply a hormone. It's a chemical in our body, which is good for our body, but long-term chronically high exposure, not what it was designed to do, creates inflammation. Do you remember we said that? So it's the same thing here. These are all conditions caused by chronic inflammation. Okay. Look, we've got the cardiovascular system, high cholesterol and triglycerides, high blood pressure, AFib, abdominal aortic aneurysm, stroke, sudden death. These are all caused by chronic long-term inflammation. Same thing with the respiratory system. This is all in your habits of health, by the way, in section 2.14, if you want to go look at this. But look, the brain, long-term inflammation causes Alzheimer's, mood disorders like depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, breast, colon, and prostate cancers. Okay, so it begins when the immune system becomes overstimulated because it's chronically getting stimulated. It could begin by breathing, eating, drinking, seeing or feeling something, hearing or thinking. And it can be caused by something even as benign as just sitting on the couch too much, not getting enough activity. And thanks to a landmark study by the Harvard School of Public Health, we now know that chronic inflammation plays a major role in the development of heart disease. What's funny is we used to think that it was high cholesterol and high blood pressure that caused these things. Now we know that it's inflammation that causes high cholesterol and blood pressure, which eventually causes heart disease. It's the same thing that Dr. A said about, we as a culture, we used to think that heart disease was the biggest killer of Americans. And then we thought, that it was something else, but now we realize it's our habits and our nutrition that is the biggest cause of death in the United States. It's the same thing in this situation. Okay, guys, it's technical, but we're going to break it down into 3 things here in just a second. Okay. So just so you know, the immune system operates a certain way with free radicals and oxidative stress. Those are big words. I don't want you to get overwhelmed. I'm just going to talk about these and then we'll take a break and we'll let Chantel talk to us for just a second. Okay. But just understand free radicals. I'm sure you've heard this in our culture before. Free radicals are simply molecules that are broken down through normal metabolism. Our body makes free radicals, right? But they can also be created by exposure to toxic chemicals. Free radicals are produced through oxidative stress and are actually used by our immune system to protect you by killing dangerous invaders. So it's actually a part of how our immune system operates. So short-lived, locally released, oxygen radicals, they are not harmful, right? However, if oxidative stress and inflammation are chronic, what have we talked about? Ongoing, prolonged exposure. If they're chronic, free radicals can kill our cells, damage our DNA, and cause you to age prematurely. So it creates this vicious cycle. So if chronic inflammation continues through 3 different ways we're about to talk about, that dangerous cycle is set into motion. So what we've talked about so far, Chantel, what are your thoughts?
I think it's interesting that the body is so complex, yet so simple, right? And so much of it has to do with nutrition and our healthy habits of sleep and motion. And I love that we don't have a lack of knowledge on this. Some of it's a little bit over my head, but I'm willing to learn because at the end of the day, was what I know this. And I don't know if you got to this part yet, but I was reading through the element this morning just because I like to be prepared. And on page 427 of Dr. Anderson's Habits of Health book, he says this: sitting is the most ignored health threat of our times. This lack of movement is activating our immune system and eroding our health. Now killing more in the world than smoking, just basically just a lack of movement. And so I've noticed that. Let me just give you 2 examples. You might have not got to that part yet, but I wanted to say this. 2 examples. So I just basically told you I was helping taking care of my mom-in-law, who is 86. And then my grandmother is still alive and she's 89. The difference in the 2, my mother-in-law did lost 60 pounds, came off of medicine, but over the years of just, her husband passing away and just some things, life happening, she's really kind of gone down. And it wasn't her eating habits that got her to where we at now. I mean, maybe but she was healthy. What got her was when she stopped moving. And I thought that was interesting as I was reading this, and I made that observation. My grandmother, who's 89, can probably work circles around most of us on the Zoom. I'm just telling you, like, she's the Energizer Bunny, right? And she has never stopped. Like, she's the one that when I put on my Facebook that I'm going on a trip, she's like, can I come? And we took her last December because she could keep up. And she's, 89, she's a little slower, but she doesn't quit moving. And it just made me think how important it was for our immune system to move our body. I know you're going to get into that a little bit, but it's kind of all works together. But I love that. I just think it's interesting. I'm still learning about the free radicals and that kind of stuff, but I think it's interesting. Just I'm actually living and seeing the difference. And so this morning when I got up to do my 3-mile walk, I didn't want to. And but I just remembered that one day I'm going to be 87 too, God willing. And I want to be able to move, right? Like, I want to be able to move my body and not have the pain. Right. The arthritis pain, I think that comes into, I'm probably getting ahead of you, Cassandra, but just from the inflammation. So yeah, throw it back over to you.
Yeah, so exactly. It's funny. They say when an elderly person falls and breaks something, it can be lethal to them, not because they're completely inactive. They lose that muscle mass and they never gain mobility again. And lack of mobility is the beginning of the end for them. So, it's funny, another really cool story is that one of my very first clients was 430 pounds. And she told me within maybe 6 days on plan, She said, it's amazing. My knees don't hurt anymore. Now, she lost 10 pounds her first week on plan. You guys, 430 to 420 should not change the pain in your knees. You still have 420 pounds on those knees. But the pain that she had wasn't necessarily from her weight, but it was from the inflammation of her diet. So, that acute pain, as soon as we fixed one third of the things that cause inflammation, her pain left her body. Same thing with people telling me that they're sleeping for the first time ever. When we get that inflammation under control, you can sleep through the night. So it's, this is just a really cool topic. So Emily, if you could throw those slides back up. All right. So this is where we're going to just break down the different causes of inflammation, the food, which is the standard American diet, and our healthier options. We're going to talk about that first because there's more to that. The other two, internal environment, external environment, it won't take too long, but I want you to see this graphic. Okay. So essentially that's what I just spoke about, how once inflammation takes place, it becomes this vicious cycle, right? Do you see it as a cycle? And there's 3 different areas that can cause inflammation. Obviously the food that we eat, high calories, refined grains, simple sugars, all the things you can read there. Our external environment, our exposure to chemicals and toxins, stress. There is a whole chapter about stress in the Habits of Health. Allergens, excess UV radiation, right? And then our internal environment. That's literally what's already going on inside of us. Chronic infections can stimulate inflammation. Visceral fat, the fat that you've got on your body, lack of sleep, overuse of antibiotics, lack of motion in that sedentary lifestyle, and depression actually can trigger inflammation. So Dr. A says at the very beginning, he says, we actually need all 6 macro habits of health, because unless the body is optimized, the opportunity for your body to be attacked is a very real threat that can be easily an all-out assault, right? So we need the habits of health, weight management, the healthy eating and hydration, healthy motion, healthy sleep, healthy mind, and healthy surroundings. All of these will come together to fight inflammation. All right. So let's talk about trigger 1. Let's talk about food. All right. Now, remember we talked about, when we're talking about fuelings, that the reason this plan is incredible is because it's a low glycemic plan with healthy, low saturated fats and lean, healthy protein, right? And because of that, our insulin levels stay low, and we know chronically high insulin levels can cause inflammation. But see, the standard American diet is not that way. The standard American diet, the Western diet, but here they call it the SAD, the SAD, it's full of the processed, high glycemic carbs, saturated fats, both of which are extremely inflammatory. All right. High glycemic sugars are inflammatory. Saturated fats are inflammatory, right? So 70% of this standard American diet is made up of processed foods. So, and therefore over half of the standard American diet is inflammatory. Okay. This is why we have an obesity epidemic, heart disease, diabetes epidemic, cancer, right? So this chart that we're seeing right here is just showing you that over half of the standard American diet of refined sugars, refined grains, refined omega-6, we're going to learn about that in just a second. Over half of the diet are these things that cause inflammation. That's why it's in red. All right. And that's why we have chronic inflammation in our society. Okay. So not only that, because 70% of the modern American diet is processed, we have high levels of chemicals, and those chemicals are stimulating our immune system almost like they're foreign invaders, right? And we're getting it chronically, continuously, nonstop. So our immune system is always on high alert. All right, so we're talking about food, and we're going to talk about carbs, healthy fats. Okay, just those two, just like you saw, the refined grains, refined sugars, and the unhealthy fats. So just very quickly, the processed high glycemic carbs create chronically high insulin levels, which contribute to chronic inflammation. I just said that. Those white flours, simple sugars, high fructose corn syrup. So the good news, okay, we're just going to spend a very short time on the carbs. The good news is that the healthy low glycemic carbs that we've all taught, that you've all been learning about, they already have antioxidants, and they can reduce inflammation by helping your body scavenge those free radicals. Remember, those free radicals, some which are not that bad, naturally produced by our body, a lot which are pretty bad because they're from exposure, right? So low GI foods, fruits and veggies, especially those in high, I don't know how to say it, carotenoids. I think that was pretty good, carotenoids. Red, yellow, orange fruits and veggies, that's an antioxidant. Vitamin C is an antioxidant. Quercetin is found in blueberries. It's an antioxidant as well. So blueberries, blackberries, dark cherries, right? So let's talk about antioxidants just briefly. They scavenge free radicals from our body, kind of scrub our body and prevent and reduce the damage caused by oxidation, and therefore help reduce inflammation. We've all heard it. We need to eat more antioxidants, right? But we didn't know why. We didn't know what they did. Well, now you know, right? They're going to scrub your body of those free radicals to reduce inflammation. All the foods that Dr. A has taught you thus far are perfect. They're antioxidant. They have these qualities. So we're going to stick to those. Okay, so we just talked about carbs. Now let's talk about fats. This topic can be confusing. We know there's a ton of different types of fats. Which fats are healthy, which fats are too much of the wrong kind. What do we know? Okay, so first, we're just going to talk about briefly two types, omega-3 and omega-6. Look, our body needs both of them. So I'm not going to call one good. I'm not going to call one bad, but I may call one better, right? Okay, so omega-3, these are the ones that we hear about all the time. They're anti-inflammatory. They reduce heart disease. They reduce blood clotting, okay? And it's things like flaxseed, canola oil, walnut, olive oil. We know olive oil is good. The fish oils, nuts and seeds, green beans, soybeans, tofu. Who knew that, right? I didn't know that. Spinach, kale, and collard greens have omega-3. We know that those are anti-inflammatory. That's why they're in the green, right? Then we have omega-6, right? Omega-6, they actually increase inflammation and increase blood clotting. They actually cause your cells to enlarge and get bigger. It's called cell proliferation. And I didn't want to go into that, so I didn't put it down, but they actually cause your cells to grow, right? So those are things like corn flour, safflower, sesame, margarine, except certain kinds, and ultra processed foods with a long shelf life. Think of those McDonald's French fries that fall in your floorboard and you find it under your car seat 3 years later and it hasn't aged. Yeah, those. All right. Okay. So we've got omega-3, better oils, omega-6, kind of want to avoid, but you still need some. All right. Now, a few more oils. Monosaturated fats are another very healthy, important fat. All right. If you look at that chart, that's things like olive oil, almonds, canola. They have those omega-3s, but not all of these have omega-3s. All right. They reduce inflammation, cholesterol, and they reduce your cardiovascular risk. All right. Now, the polyunsaturated, they are not quite as anti-inflammatory as the monounsaturated, but they're still in the green, right? They say olive oil is most useful with its own antioxidant properties. I didn't know this, you guys. That works like ibuprofen and similar over-the-counter meds to reduce pain and inflammation. I had no idea. I'd never even heard of such a thing. I knew it was good for heart health, but I had no idea that it had those type of anti-inflammatory properties, right? And can increase consumption of nuts and butters and spreads made from raw nuts, avocados, and high quality oils. Those are ways you can find monounsaturated fats. Okay. Now look at those trans fats and saturated fats. Very limited, right? We don't want to eat large amounts of these, especially those trans fats. Usually he says red is toxic. Anything that's in the red, he wants you to just stay away from because it's toxic, whether that's in the sugars and the meats, in the fats, right? So partially hydrogenated vegetable oils. most margarines. The exception would be something like, I think it's Smart Balance. In the Habits of Health, he says the Smart Balance is actually a good margarine to have. All right. Baked goods have that lard and the fats that are solid at room temperature. Vegetable shortening, for example, and commercially prepared French fries, like McDonald's French fries, right? That never age. Okay, go ahead. All right. And then finally, oils, do's, and don'ts. So do choose an oil with a high smoke point. Higher smoke point means there's less oil impurities, okay? Do use low polyunsaturated fats for high heat cooking, like frying, searing, grilling, stir frying, roasting, things like that. Do use light or refined olive oil, avocado oil, refined palm oil, or coconut oil for medium heat cooking. So that's like sauteing, stewing, baking, or braising. And do use unfiltered extra virgin olive oil for salad drizzling, dish drizzling, things like that for maximum health benefits. He says, do not reuse vegetable oils because they become a breeding ground for hydrogenated byproducts and free radicals. In other words, that after you use the oils, they change their chemical compound to become something else. Don't use trans fats. We've already talked about, they're extremely inflammatory. Don't overcook or char meat. This is going to break some of your hearts, but the grill is not necessarily, I'm not going to say necessarily, that black charred yumminess is actually incredibly inflammatory, right? He says, don't overcook your meat and don't char your meat because it actually causes the breakdown of proteins and fats that create free radicals. It's an oxidative process, right? Okay. And finally, we're about to finish food up. Just quickly, these are other anti-inflammatory foods. A lot of these foods have antioxidants, which is why they're anti-inflammatory. Okay. Herbs. Look at all the herbs there. Take a picture of this if you want to. Teas. I switched from coffee to tea last June, and I had no idea that it was anti-inflammatory. White tea is the best, followed by green tea and then black tea. And it says 2 to 3 cups a day to receive benefits. Chocolate, you guys. I think Courtney Pendle, this will make her happy, make Chantel happy too. But guess what? She's dark chocolate. I am not a dark chocolate fan. This is why it actually has 10 times antioxidants than milk chocolate. It actually has lower fat content too, but dark chocolate has several antioxidants. And then wine. There's a reason in France, even though they have a diet rich in creams and butters, that they have very low instances of heart disease. They drink wine. And it has been proven that moderate amounts of alcohol, like 1 drink a day for women, 2 for men, actually lowers inflammation and risk of heart disease and type 2 diabetes. So it's a powerful antioxidant. Okay, now let me just check the time. Okay, this is going to go really quickly, guys. We just talked about inflammation trigger 1. It was food, those high glycemic carbs, those saturated and polysaturated, partially hydrogenated oils and fats that are causing inflammation. Now we're going to talk about the second internal environment. This is the second trigger, okay? So just very quickly, I'm going to read through these. Visceral fat, the fat that we have on our body. When you are at your highest weight, even though you had fixed your nutrition, as you had started this plan and you had taken care of some of your inflammation, unfortunately, that extra weight that you have carried, or maybe you're still carrying, is still causing some elements of inflammation in your body, right? We're going to fix that. We're going to get it off. But this is the thing, excess macronutrients in your fat tissue actually stimulates the fat cells to release inflammatory mediators. In other words, free radicals. Okay. The fat on our body actually stimulates our immune system. Okay. Lack of sleep. This is something that I get on my husband about all the time. When your sleep is restricted, your blood pressure doesn't come down the way it's supposed to. And high elevated blood pressure, and it may not even be super elevated, but there is a time when your body needs it to be very low. It can actually trigger cells and blood vessels to activate inflammation. Chronic infections, like if you're constantly sick with sinus infections and viruses, obviously your body is always in fight mode. So that creates a chronic inflammation environment. The overuse of antibiotics. By the way, guys, I had to look some of this up because he doesn't really go into it, but I have to know why. Don't tell me why antibiotics, the overuse of it, is going to cause inflammation. Tell me why. All right. So it induces, I'm going to explain what this means. It induces translocation of live colonic commensal bacteria to the mesenteric lymph node and induces an inflammatory response. What that means essentially is that the bacteria, it moves it to a different place, but in that process, actually tissue is damaged. Epithelial cells get damaged in that. And anytime there's cell damage, there's inflammation, right? So that's how overuse of antibiotics create inflammation. And lack of motion. This is what Chantel was talking about, you guys. I put these kind of together: lack of motion and sedentary lifestyle. First of all, lack of motion makes you less insulin sensitive. All right. So when you're active all the time, your body becomes incredibly insulin sensitive. It controls those levels of insulin, so you don't have those chronically high insulin levels. When you are sedentary, a couple of things happen. One, your body is less insulin sensitive, and you have more opportunities for you to have chronically high insulin levels, which causes inflammation. But also, when you have loss of muscle and increase in your fat tissue, we've just already learned that that also contributes to inflammation, okay? And depression. That's an internal environment, right? This was interesting. There are mental states. Dr. A talks a ton about your mental state. There are mental states that can activate inflammation, and then that inflammation can exacerbate your mental health condition. So that is a vicious cycle as well. I'm going to tell you, there have been times, and I tell my clients this, if I have gone off plan with a high glycemic carb, I tell my clients to expect what I call the carb blues for about 3 days until they detox. Why? Because I didn't understand why. I just knew that if I went off the rails and ate those high glycemic sugar and carb, within maybe a few hours, but definitely I would wake up the next morning, waking up thinking, why am I feeling this way? Why am I anxious? Why am I depressed? Now I know, and I just expect it. If I make the decision to eat something that's toxic the next day, I am going to have depression, right? I didn't have a clue that it had to do with inflammation because of the sugar, right? And now I know I've got to get through that detox, and then that fat burn, and my mental state is just all sunshine and flowers, right? But, some of you dealt with 20 years of depression until you got in fat burn, and you know it's true, right? Okay. And then finally, trigger 3. Okay, trigger 1 was food. Trigger 2 was internal. Trigger 3 is external, okay? So air, pollutants, bacteria, mold, that's supposed to say mites, toxins, and that's supposed to say toxins, okay, guys? He talks about air filters, right? Now, if you live in one of those big cities, there's only so much you can do, but you can do what you can do, right? Our water supply, I will tell you, when I read this, I freaked out a little bit. He talked about the stuff that is in our public water supply, the contaminants, painkillers, hormones, pesticides, household cleaners, plasticizers. I don't even know what that is. Dioxin and heavy metals. And he talks about the importance of water filters, and he talks about reverse osmosis systems. That's the prime one. I'm drinking water out of my sink, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm going to have to go get an osmosis system now, because now I'm freaking out. Noise, you guys. Did you know that exposure to excessive noise triggers stress, anxiety, depression, high blood pressure? I did know that because I have 3 boys, and I've experienced all of those because of their noise level, right? But also excessive noise triggers something called a cochlear inflammatory response. So it actually physically creates inflammation. X-rays, radiation, he says to avoid excess or unnecessary radiation, right? Because too much exposure can cause cell damage. And he talks about multiple sex partners. Why? It increases your risk of contracting diseases. And as we know, chronic disease causes systemic inflammation. Okay. Antidotes to external inflammation. Exercise, guys. This is just what Chantel said. It's the single most effective way to lower your inflammatory state, to counteract stress and decrease your CRP level. All right. What's the CRP level? It's a test that they can take. It's a C-reactive protein. It actually can measure the inflammation in your body. So anytime the doctors want to see what your inflammation level is, they'll do the CRP. Okay. Exercise can lower that. He says, get out and about. Decrease your stress by spending time with people you like and who support your habits of health. He says, go natural. Studies show spending time outdoors in nature actually decreases stress and enhances your immune system. Treat your body. I'm all up for this one, you guys. It says massages are proven to help you unwind, lower your C-reactive protein, and reduce inflammation. So the next time your spouse says, why are you going to get a massage? Say, I am reducing the inflammation in my body, right? He says laughter has shown to decrease stress, lower CRP, and lower unhealthy hormone levels. So some of y'all just need to go out and smile a little bit more. He says, focus on the positive. You have to take control of your negative mental dialogue and focus on gratitude. And you're going to have people on here, some coaches who have taught on this before, the power of gratitude, of reducing stress and changing how you see the world. And then he talks about his stop, challenge, and choose. And we've studied stop, challenge, and choose. It actually diffuses a potentially stress-filled situation. Okay. And then our last slide. Chantel, do you want to walk us through these 3 questions? They're the last 3 questions of the life book.
Sure, yeah. So that's so good too. And thank you for bringing up the massage part, because, I do that once a month, and now I can say it's for my health, right? It's good and healthy for me. So there you go, if anybody needs to borrow that. But what does this element mean to you right now? Like, I really want you to think about that. You can put in the chat or you don't have to, but like, what does this element mean to you? First of all, do you have a little more knowledge? Because knowledge is power. Do we have a little more knowledge to do the things, right? Getting out in nature and laughing, being around people who make you happy. Honestly, sometimes when you're in a high stress situation, just go and take a little bit of a walk, breathing in some air, right? Hopefully you don't live in a high pollution area, but breathing in some outdoor air, some nature is good. So what does this element mean to you right now? For me, it means, and I'll just off the top of the cuff, it just means, there are things that I can be mindful of. There are stress reducers that can actually lower the inflammation in my body. That's just good, right? So what does that mean to you right now? Sorry, Emily, let me go to the question number 2. I guess I could look at my life book. By the way, if you are wanting to read up more on this, go to your life book section 2.14. What does this element give you the opportunity to reflect on? Maybe put that in the chat. One thing that you can reflect on, whether it's reducing stress, eating better, what is one thing from this element that you can reflect on? If you want to share that, you definitely can. And then the last question says this: what actions are you going to take as a result of this element? Right? Okay, Emily, you can take the slide down. I love that we can talk about as a community, and we're learning and growing together, that we can talk about decreasing inflammation and how we can use that for overall health. I can be a great testament of when we have those celebrations. 2 weeks ago, we had a graduation party for my niece, and they had all the stuff, the cookies and the cake and I had a plan, but I ended up eating a cookie, which opened the door to sugar, right? Then I had to have a piece of cake later. I'm telling you, I felt so bad after. And then I asked myself this question all the time: why do I do that? Not because I can't, right? But why? I hate the way I feel after, and sometimes it's not worth it. And so a stop, challenge, and choose to say, wait a minute, how will that cookie make me feel tomorrow? And is it worth it? Right? And I think some people feel like I feel, well, let me just say this. Now I'm just going off the rails and just being honest, right? So right now at 49, I'm like, I don't want to restrict myself and not have the cookie. But I watch my mom-in-law, who's now 86, who has all the inflammation and lack of movement and all the hurting and all the joint pain, right? And she doesn't want any of the junk. She feels so bad, she don't even want to eat. So I'm thinking, okay, I can have it now, feel bad later, or have it not at all, because even like later on in life, do I want to feel like that, right? So it's kind of like I'm thinking about my future and acting in right now. Like, where do I want to be in my future, and then act right now. And so, Cassandra, you always do such an amazing job of sharing that. And just as a little testimony, I'll let you come on at the end, Cassandra, and wrap it up if you need to. But as a little testimony, there was not a better person, I think, who could testify to inflammation than my sweet friend, Chantel Jenkins, who tells me this all the time, her story. So I would just like her to share her story on inflammation with you. Chantel?
Hey,
Hey.
thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. So just a little backstory. I was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis when I was 25, which is a type of rheumatic disease, along with fibromyalgia. And it does cause lots of different symptoms, soft tissue problems, deep tissue. I have joint issues. Ankylosing spondylitis is something that causes your bones to fuse together, and it starts in your hips and your spine. And so I'll tell you guys, I was on about 12 medications years ago. They told me when I was 25, I would be in a wheelchair within 5 years because of the conditions I have. Over the years, I ended up with more symptoms, migraine headaches, nausea that was uncontrollable, inflammation, so much that my swelling was becoming edema, and it was just hard. In 2009, they told me that if I did not change the career I had, that I would be bedridden within 6 months. Then years down the road came this program. I had been on everything, guys. I have been on celiac programs, paleo programs, the elimination diet. I did Jenny Craig. I did all kinds of things trying to do something to help me. But a lot of times, whenever dietitians and nutritionists would give me certain things because I was under so much doctor's care, they would just say, here you go. This is the things that you can have, and just follow this and you should be good to go. Well, just to let you know that it never worked out for me. I had to prepare too much. I continued to try to figure out ways that I could have more of this and more of that. And I never felt better because I ended up giving up. When this program came along, within the first couple of weeks, the reflux that I had was pretty much gone. The swelling that I had was gone in just a few days. And when I tell you swelling, I looked like a pregnant mom with her feet hanging on the outside of her shoes on a daily basis. I used to be a hairdresser. My RNs would tell me, you really need to go to the emergency room. You are not looking well. And it was that bad. I do not suffer from that anymore using our program. Now I know, and everything that they have covered today is so on point. Now I know when I eat something, I know immediately how it's going to affect me, because I have paid attention to my body, and our plan has taught us healthy habits. It's implemented things into our days that are free of all these external things that make us feel worse. And I'm gonna tell you, the movement is another thing. Guys, if you have a job where you sit at a desk all day long, believe me, you can get up for 5 minutes and go walk to the bathroom. It is so important. Get up and take a walk, move your body. If you are going to have something that's salty, if you're going to get off base and you're going to have something salty one day, drink an extra glass of water. Use the tools that you've learned to continue to help your body. I started sleeping. I had insomnia because of the pain I was suffering from. I've had insomnia since I was very young. I might have slept 4 hours, and this is no exaggeration. I might have slept 4 hours a week after I had my boys. It was severe. And they would put me on medications, and guess what would happen? Just like with the antibiotics and all these different things, your body will start to get immune. It will get overstimulated. Then guess what happens? And I hate to use this word, but this is just the truth. Just like an addict, you have to come down off of those things. And it is difficult. And then your body is shaking and you are not resting anymore. So why not use good nutrition instead of using the food. I told the doctors finally, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to take my chances. I'm not going to use the medication, because by the time I'm 60, I'll be 50 this year. By the time I'm 60, nothing's going to work for me, because my body is just going to be overstimulated from everything. So I'm so thankful that nutrition has helped me to be a healthier person. I go biking, I go hiking, I go paddleboarding. I do things that I didn't think I would be able to do at this age. And I want to just touch on depression a little bit. Some of you know, I lost my son in 2020. It is easy to become depressed. Yes, food will cause that. If you overindulge on something, remember how it used to feel if you used to be a drinker when you would wake up and have a hangover? The food will do the same thing. And then if you're struggling with something, a trauma or anything else, it's just going to pile up. It's going to make you overwhelmed. And then it's going to be harder for you to come up out of that. The thing that we have control over is what we put in our bodies. And I know because of our program, I know because of good nutrition, that my mind has been clearer, I've been stronger. And so those days whenever I feel like I'm having a hard day, I still have a clear mind, and I know that I need to get up off the couch, no matter how sad I am, and I need to go get in the sunshine, and I need to put the right things in my body, because I still want to show up for the family that I do have here. And I never want to go back to the way I used to feel. I love the way I feel now. I love that I get to share something with people that can help them live the best life that they can live. And so I can't say enough about our program. I love it. I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for my coach Chantel that said yes, and all of my friends. And you guys have done amazing sharing this with people. It's been a great tool to be part of Coffee with Clients, guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Chantel.
Thank you so much, Chantel. I mean, anybody else all up in their feelings now, all up in their emotions? She's done amazing. And the inflammation, just that part, because I knew her before plan, just that part is such a huge difference for her. So Cassandra, any last words?
No, except, guys, it's all a choice. They showed you the choices you could make that cause inflammation, the choices you can make that limit inflammation, and we all have a choice. We can choose what, like Chantel says, we can choose what we put in our mouth. We can choose if we stay in the house and stay sedentary or get out. We can choose the people that we surround ourselves. All those macro habits we can choose, and how we feel is simply the result of what we've chosen. So let's all just make really good choices.
Awesome. So here's your challenge. Let's get out. Let's get moving. Let's educate ourselves. Everybody get the Habits of Health book and read section 2.14 this week. That's your homework. And join us next Friday for Coffee with Clients as we talk about element 21. Do you need to supplement? Also, yeah, please go back and watch the recordings if you need to. Next week, we're going to talk about what about supplements, right? We're going to talk about that. So join us next Friday. Hope you all have an amazing, healthy weekend. See you next week.